Among more than 4 dozen vetoes, Governor Joe Lombardo struck down a bill seeking to fix pricing across a number of industries in the state. Attorney General Aaron Ford says the bill would prevent companies from colluding and manipulating the prices of essential goods and services. It would have made price fixing a criminal offense. It would have authorized the Attorney General's office to investigate and prosecute pricing decisions. Lombardo arguing it would give Attorney General Aaron Ford too much power over these pricing decisions. When it comes to housing, Lombardo says the bill would impose a rent control, restricting the ability of landlords to adjust rent prices in response to market conditions.
And of course, we've heard about the rental market manipulation, where certain real estate companies have been using computer algorithms to fix rent rates above normal market levels, forcing higher rents on Nevada families without any legitimate justification.
Lombardo criticizing the bill for being a case of government overreach. Ford, however, saying the bill would have helped prevent price manipulation in several key industries like airline, pharmaceutical, and meat industries.